Hello and welcome. This is Virginia Preston, a good friend of mine who I've known for quite a little while now.
We have known each other for some years,
I've known Virginia when she was starting to do the Sedona method. The Sedona method, if you want to maybe just do a quick little touch on where you started with that and how you've grown and what you've done since then.
Yeah. Well, some years ago, and I still continue to offer the Sedona method, or work that's based on the Sedona method in Kelowna, and that's an emotional release technique that's done in mindfulness. And I've taught workshops and group series and see clients one-to-one related to that work. And Shannon, you participated in a series that I taught.
Very powerful, really good stuff. Really kind of got to the core of it.
Yeah, it is potent work for sure. Really, it's release work, emotional release work. And that in 2008, I started a yoga and meditation business in Kelowna called True Nature Yoga. And from there, it's grown to become True Nature counseling, tantra, yoga, and meditation. So it has a number of different aspects of work underneath the big umbrella of psycho-spiritual healing and self-development.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll put that on the little credits after. So it's TrueNatureYoga.com.
Yeah. So the current name for the business is True Nature, and then there's a colon. Counseling, tantra, yoga, and meditation. So there's a Facebook page, there's a bio online for me that's more tantra specific, but also gives an overview of other services as well. So even if you just search the name Virginia Preston Kelowna, Virginia Preston Yoga, Virginia Preston Counseling, Virginia Preston Tantra, you'll find it. It'll come up.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, that's great that you offer all of those wonderful teachings to help people get in touch with themselves and really heal and grow, and there's lots of different ways to do that.
Many ways.
Yeah. So speaking of, Virginia is going to be going to Seattle.
At the end of January, so we're January 8th or so right now, 2016, and at the end of the month, beloved teacher, mentor of mine is giving a workshop kind of training in Seattle where she facilitates a self-inquiry process called The Work.
Now this is Byron Katie she's going to go see, so I'm sure some of you have heard of Byron Katie, and I totally support Byron Katie's work, and so that's exciting that Virginia will be getting to meet her. And
I first discovered her work in about 2004 when I was working at a counseling center in Victoria, and I was in charge of the lending library in part. That was part of my role there at the counseling center, and so we would get new books in all the time to the library that the staff would purchase, and one of them was Loving What Is, which is her first book, and she's written a whole number of other books since then, but I devoured that book in like a day or two and started doing the self-inquiry process that she outlines, and found it super powerful, and that it's still equally powerful like 12 years later, it's like really
resonates.
Very solid practice to help people question their stressful thinking and unwind, kind of release unnecessary suffering from their lives. So it's just like kind of a really powerful go-to practice when people are feeling distress. It's like you pull out a pen and paper and do the process, and it starts to open the mind. Yeah,
that's exciting.
Yeah.
So when Virginia gets back, she will share all of her practices with workshops and exciting new practices for everybody.
Yeah, one of the ideas behind wanting to go be with Byron Katie in Seattle is that I've had a workshop idea cooking for a while now, and this just feels like the catalyst to move forward with offering it locally. I don't really see any self-inquiry related workshops or retreats being offered locally, and I certainly don't see that there are any certified facilitators of the work in Kelowna. So yeah, it just feels like there could be a what do you call it, like a gap in services there, right? That I could fill with a workshop that's based on that process. And I've done a little bit already. I've taught at the Rec Center a series where we did different inquiry processes, and just knowing how powerful it's been for me in my life, it just feels like a really natural fit to share that with other people. And I've also seen other people have really powerful experiences, even 1 or 2 pages into inquiry, they're just like, whoa man, a big thing just shifted for me there, you know? So it's like, whether you have lots of experience or no experience with inquiry, it's such a potent tool.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so tell me why you're passionate about this, what it is that you feel so connected and so drawn to doing this work for others.
Yeah, well, when I trace it back, I always had an interest in psychological things and spiritual things, like from the time I was a child. And I can't really explain that through my family of origin, right? Like I grew up in an RCMP family, more kind of, traditional, main kind of conservative, probably family in some ways. We moved a lot growing up, right? I definitely didn't grow up with like a hippie family at all. So I didn't get whatever this is that has kind of driven me for all these years. Definitely doesn't really come from family influences, other than I think I perceived some things in my growing up years that felt like, how would I call it, a certain void or a certain absence of nourishment spiritually and nourishment psychologically, kind of mentally, emotionally, So that probably inspired me to seek for those things in my own life. And for some reason, just was very drawn to anything to do with altered states of consciousness, the occult, astrology, mysticism, tarot, psychology. I had a babysitter who used to come stay with us when my brother and I were kids, and she was a teenage girl, right? I was maybe like 8 years old or something, and she would come to babysit us, and she mentioned that she had seen I think it was a film at that time, the movie Sybil, which was like, I think Sally Field played Sybil, and she had 3 personalities. It was like a film about multiple personality disorder, basically.
Oh, okay.
And that was so fascinating to me. Like, I used to interrogate this 14-year-old babysitter and try to get her to explain to me how a mind could split into different personalities and stuff. Like, I was so...
You're curious.
Very,
that's great.
Yeah. Used to do past life regressions on my cousins, when I was 10 and stuff. And I don't know where, I read a lot of books, and I was just always really interested in that stuff. So I kind of just fanned the flames of those interests quietly on my own in my life. And then when I went to university, I studied psychology. And from there, got more interested in spirituality and world spiritual traditions and wisdom teachings, and started to travel, did some traveling in Europe and Asia in my 20s, and got to go to places like Tibet and India and Nepal and China and Thailand, and really was very opened, I think, by those experiences. And it just went from there. It's just been, I would say, I'm going to be 42 in February, and it's been a good 20 years now of sustained, consistent interest in these things, and lots of study and practice, Yeah.
And one of the things that you brought back was Tantra, which I have done a Tantra course with Virginia as well. And that's there's not a whole lot in Kelowna for that as well. So it's great that you have these different modalities that people would be interested in. And to come and see Virginia for things like this as well. So where do you see yourself with your growth? Is this just a natural organic progression?
Well, it kind of the interest in psychology and the training in that was present for sure in my 20s, and then I got more involved in yoga, meditation, breath work, self-inquiry, these kinds of things in my later 20s. And the Tantra evolution honestly was an organic offshoot of everything else that I was doing. I was doing my own kind of personal healing, self-discovery work, was doing spiritual practices, was doing that in community, in First Nations, with First Nations people, and in yoga environments, in meditation environments. And from there, it was like, honestly, it sounds mystical, but I started having dreams and visions about becoming a yoga teacher. Like, I was praying a lot and meditating a lot in those days about a larger purpose being revealed to me. And it's honestly true that those prayers were answered. When those visions came to me, it was several years before they actually manifested in real time. So when they first came, I was like, become a yoga teacher? Like, really? I kind of was like, okay, I was seriously asking for a vision and you're telling me to become a yoga teacher, and now looking back, it's like it just hadn't landed fully yet in my life, right? But that's where the road was unfolding to, because I was practicing surrender to a larger calling, right? Not my will be done, but thy will be done, right? What does life want to use me for, kind of. And Tantra was an offshoot of that, honestly. Tantra started to come through to me just spontaneously in my own lived experience. When I was about 29, I started having experiences that I would describe as tantric in terms of sexuality and intimacy. And from there, I started having dreams about that same kind of subject, and basically dreams that were giving me the message that there are other purposes for sexuality and intimacy beyond just procreation and recreation, right? That transformation, spiritual awakening, healing, etc., are all really valid reasons to engage in sexuality and intimacy. And because I wasn't someone naturally who was very drawn toward the more conventional model of get married, have a bunch of children, one child, many children, whatever, that model didn't really speak to me very much. So then it was like, well, if you're not doing that, like, what else do you do, right? And there isn't really much of an alternative that is offered to us.
Programming in what we're supposed to expect from sex, and it is a little bit one-sided and sort of self-fulfilling, and when you see that there's such a bigger picture of what you can do as a tool to a more spiritual sharing of
intimacy,
love, and energy and
communion with.
It just makes it a deeper practice spiritually, but in a more intimate way.
Totally.
Which I want to learn a little bit more of and get to know a bit more, but I really enjoyed it. And so where do you see yourself in the Byron Katie future in that sort of
yeah
respect?
well that feels just like a continuation and a next leveling kind of work that I've already been doing for a long time. I already use self-inquiry processes in my work as a counselor, and also it creeps into teaching yoga, it creeps into teaching tantra. It's an orientation toward a conscious, curious relationship with our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, the deeper existential kind of concepts that we carry about life. And the deeper work spiritually does seem to be about excavating and liberating some of that stuff so that we are not slaves to our conditioning, right? That we're living as free beings, you know?
So certainly another level.
Yeah, it's just another really powerful tool. Yeah, because I think that probably the deepest calling for me in all of this, whether the modality is yoga or tantra or psychotherapy or inquiry, is an investigation, right? A deeper investigation of what's happening here. You know, one of my teachers would say, you know, fundamental questions: who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going to? What is this about? What is the purpose of life?
And what's my purpose and what's my role in this world?
Yeah, so self-actualization on a psychological level and on a spiritual level. And so I see that all of these tools and practices that I, you know, engage in my own life and that I guide other people in are means toward that larger goal, right? Which is full expression. Yeah, on all levels, not just survival level, but kind of, you know, the higher order questions of life as well. Yeah,
making a much richer, fuller life.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really
You're
appreciate
so
that you were able to talk to us and give us all your information about the wonderful things that you do.
Thank you.
And I totally support everything you do. It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's great, and I've healed from you, and I've learned so much from you myself. And I just want to thank you for everything you do. So if you want to support Virginia, she does have a website at the moment on Facebook, looking for a little bit of support to help her in her Byron Katie adventures. So
yeah,
please.
I'll just speak to that for a sec. There's a GoFundMe crowd fundraising campaign that I just posted on Facebook earlier this week, and you can go to my main page, Virginia Preston, and see links to that. See links and the progress to date with that little undertaking. It's been so heartwarming to see how generous and open-hearted and encouraging people have been with that process. So really, it's like, if you ever, I recommend just doing a crowd fundraiser at some point, just because it is honestly, truly so heartwarming. Yeah, and so that's underway currently. So if you feel inspired, you can check that out and make a contribution. Great. Or share it on Facebook.
Great. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll post all the information up here. Thank you very much for taking your time with me.
You're so welcome.
And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.